Okay, welcome everyone. This is a meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton, New Jersey. It's March 14th, 2022. And we'll start with our meeting statement.
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Perron-Lambros.
Here.
Ms. Niedergang.
Here.
Mr. Cohen.
Here.
Ms. Fraga.
Here.
Ms. Sachs.
Here.
Mr. Newland. Mayor Frida.
Here. Thank you. Just one quick note. We will have 3 resolutions added to the agenda that weren't on the published agenda. Those will be resolutions 22-21 through 22-123. And we'll explain them when we get to the resolutions section of the meeting. They all do with have to do with some of our affordable housing projects. Okay, getting on to the regular agenda. I am pleased to welcome again for a yearly update that we have from Princeton University, President Eisgruber. And Chris, the floor is yours.
Mark, sorry, I was forgetting how to unmute there. Look, let me start off just by saying once again that it's a pleasure to have a chance to be together with this council, at least virtually, and I very much hope in person sometime soon. Certainly we at the university feel that we may at last be rounding a corner here, and one of the advantages of that would be to enable all of us to get together again. But until that's possible, I'm really grateful to you for giving me a chance to meet with you and respond to questions. I thought, Mark, I would speak and say a few things very briefly before taking whatever questions the council might have. At least my sense is that as we've all dealt with Zoom over a period of years right now, the premium on brevity is even greater when it's on screens and everybody is listening on screen. So I'll try to be conscious of that. I want to start off, first of all, by thanking you not only for having me on at your meeting, but also for the tremendous partnership that this town has provided to us over these last 2 difficult years. It has been a time when it's really mattered to have the university working in concert with the town. It's mattered to us greatly to have the support of the town and its officials. I don't see him, but I do see a square indicating that Jeff Grosser is on the call. And Jeff, if I can thank you, and I can see you as well. And if I can just express special thanks to you, everybody on our staff who has worked closely with you is admiring of the work that you've done and grateful for the partnership that you've provided. And I really appreciate it, and we at Princeton appreciate it. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, right now at Princeton, we are very much leaning into the in-person. We feel that we are reaching a point as the Omicron surge subsides in New Jersey and around the country, where as public health officials, including the CDC, have indicated, we are getting into an environment where we may expect some longer term stability, and where the metrics that we need to watch are changing, and that longer term stability comes from the recognition of 2 conditions. One is we're so fortunate, and here again, I'm glad that at the university we've been able to mandate vaccines. I'm glad we live in a highly vaccinated community in the town of Princeton, but those vaccines are spectacularly effective at preventing serious disease, and that gives us the advantage that we needed as we went into this pandemic. The second long-term condition is it just doesn't appear that this is going away, and so we now have to be in a situation where we live with what the vaccines enable us to do, recognizing that COVID is with us. And with that in mind, as you know, various public health authorities have recommended focusing not so much on case counts anymore, but on stresses to the hospital system, on instances of chronic disease, and on managing absenteeism. We are in the process of reconfiguring our strategies at the university now to work with those criteria and lean in to the extent that they allow, and we think that extent is very great. to maximizing in-person contact. So today was our first day without a mask mandate on the campus. Obviously, we are continuing to respect the choices of those who wish to wear masks, but giving people the option not to do so when they are in meetings and inside of buildings. It's striking to me that this occurs almost 2 years to the day from the time that we had to send our students away. And it has felt good for me over the course of the day to be gathering with colleagues and being able to do that where I can see people's smiles. So I look forward to doing that with all of you. Part of what this has meant is that even before these changes, we've started to ask the question, not whether we're going to have events on campus, but how can we have those events? So a really critical one for us was Alumni Day. It was smaller than usual, but the marvelous Maria Ressa, our undergraduate alum from the class of '86, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, traveled halfway around the world to be with us. A lot of our alumni came in. We were delighted to be able to say to them, look, we can do lots of things. We can't have a lunch. So please go out and patronize the restaurants and other establishments in town, which I know they did. And we look forward to continue to have more people in who are going to provide more customers to the Princeton business community at other kinds of events over the course of the year. We also feel, and I'll just tick through these very quickly, we also feel that this has been a time when not only with the town's partnership have we been able to get through this crisis, but there have been a lot of exciting things happening on campus. I summarized some of those in my State of the University letter that I think we shared with all of you, where we focus on the expansion of our undergraduate student body and the campus. That's one topic. We're really excited to be welcoming 125 more undergraduate students per year beginning this August and having those new residential colleges open. One piece of that I'm very excited about is it has enabled us to admit students from different kinds of backgrounds than we did in the past. You may have seen that we voted, our faculty voted actually earlier this year to double the size of our transfer program, a program we didn't have at all when I took office. That program has allowed us to take community college transfers at Princeton for the first time. It's allowed us to take military veterans at Princeton. We have a couple of Mercer County community college students who are now enrolled as Princeton University students. And we look forward to continuing to build on that foundation. The second point I mentioned of things that we're excited about going forward is our Venture Forward capital campaign. It's all about making audacious bets on human talent that make a difference in the world for the better. I love using Maria Ressa as an example of this these days. Obviously, I can't claim that she's typical, but it's fabulous to see somebody who comes here, gets an English degree as an undergraduate, has a certificate in theater, exemplifies what we want to do with liberal arts education, and then goes out to become a pioneering truth-seeking journalist who's making a real difference in the world. So we hope to be able to fund more initiatives along those lines. The next point I make is about our commitments to diversity and equity. And again, here I'm really proud to be working on it arm in arm with you in the municipality of Princeton. I know that a commitment to equity, a commitment to diversity is one of the distinguishing features of this town. It's part of what makes it such a great place to live. We've stepped up those efforts on the campus in the wake of the national reckoning with racism after the murder of George Floyd. We had an outstanding year this past year in terms of our faculty recruiting and the diversification of our faculty. And the point I stressed in the letter is there are times when people treat excellence and equity as though they were competing considerations or divergent considerations. I think you would agree with me. Equity and diversity are essential to excellence at this university. We see over and over again that we become stronger by drawing talent from every available background and from all kinds of sectors of society. So thank you for being partners in that. And then I close by talking about some of the ways we're thinking about new dimensions that the university might move into, including with efforts to take on pioneering research and in ways that I think may be exciting for the state of New Jersey to think about partnerships that would build on some of what we've learned over the course of this pandemic. We certainly believe the in-person is essential. I think all of us have learned that from the K-12 system to the collegiate system during this pandemic. You can't do it all on Zoom. It really does matter to be together. But Zoom may give us ways to do things that are hybrid. It may help us to leverage partnerships with community colleges and others. And we really like to think about ways, whether there are ways that we can reach a greater number and a greater variety of students. So Mark, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of the members of the council again for your partnership that has enabled us to move forward and to work hand in hand on a number of issues, from the management of water runoff in the town to issues about equity and diversity and COVID. Thank you for that, and thank you for giving me a chance to talk to you. I'm happy to respond to questions.
Sure, Chris, thank you very much. And I would just like to tell people watching this broadcast that if you go to our website and click on the agenda package, you can see a lot of information. Chris's letter that he mentioned while he was talking is there. There's a lot of information on the university contributions to the community-wide, which is really good reading. And people should be aware of all that the university does do, whether it's through financial support of many organizations or whatever. And I will just comment that all during COVID, the university was helping us a lot behind the scenes as we were working with, and at times putting pressure on county and state officials and staff people to do the right thing to help roll out vaccine and do as much as possible. So a lot of that doesn't make the press, but it definitely needs to be acknowledged. So let's go around. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Eve, I think you had your hand up first, and then we'll go to Leticia.
I did. Thank you. And Chris, good to have you with us again. And as you said, hopefully next year you'll be larger than, I think, about an inch and a quarter. It's shocking still to see people in person when they become three-dimensional. So I spent a lot of time agonizing today over what to bring up, since we usually each get to ask you one question. So I think my question is a nice segue to what you were talking about and to some of the material that I read today. And I want to join the mayor first in thanking you, also thanking Kristen Applegate, who's on the call, who's been like a tremendous asset to us over the last couple of years in really serving as that go-between in that community relations person. So thank you. And really, as the mayor said, your assistance in, with our small business fund, with helping our restaurants, with providing meals to people in the community, to the vaccine clinics, and a spirit of generosity and sharing that we really appreciate. So of course, I want to follow up on that a little bit. So the issue that I am interested in, and I would love to get a cohort of people at the university interested in, and some of them I know are already interested in this issue, is, what we call the missing middle. So, as I'm sure the town, especially over the last 2 years during COVID, the pressure on housing and the increase in housing prices is really noticeable. And I was very glad to read in today's report that you're providing a lot of extra housing for graduate students and an increase in graduate student stipends, which registers with me, as you know, as a former graduate student. Because one of my concerns is that, university graduate students have been in competition for lower cost housing here. But what I want to talk about is really a little bit broader than that this missing middle housing, we have a very, I think, assertive and excellent plan for affordable housing. And there's plenty of housing if you have a lot of money. But for our seniors, for some of particularly our Black community who grew up here, a lot of people are being squeezed out. And so what I want to do is kind of challenge you and the university, and this could be everything from material science work to conservation work in terms of green buildings, passive house, to work with us Princeton is a tiny microcosm, but I think we have a lot of the same problems that the rest of the country. I mean, the problem of homelessness, for example, which, is not acute in Princeton, although we do have a small problem, but in other places is really vast. And so I would love to see like a brain trust at Princeton work with us here to address some of those problems, to enable our less well-off, more diverse members of the community to stay here, because I know that's important to you personally, and of course to people who you might want to hire, to the students you want to attract. And I think all of us are very concerned that that is something that we're losing. And so, so I think we could work together really well on this issue and try to come up with ways to meet that need. And so that's my, I know it's not really a question, it's maybe a plea, or I know the materials that you submitted talked about thinking big. So this is kind of both big and small at the same time.
Eve, thank you very much for the question, which I'll treat as an invitation, and we'll look for ways to accept it and to work together. Let me just comment on a couple of the things that you mentioned. As you said, we increased our graduate stipends this year by around 25%, recognizing how important it is to support early career scholars and researchers at a pivotal time in their lives, and trying to make sure that they're able to flourish in their housing and with regard to their other needs, so that they can focus attention on their studies. We think that's really important. We also think it's important to build additional housing so that they're not simply competing for other housing that already exists, as you say, in a squeezed environment within Princeton. So one of the first projects to go up on our Lake campus, and already in design and preparation work, is additional graduate housing that should go a long way toward meeting that need without having to stress the supply in Princeton. We also have a lot of faculty who are interested in the kinds of projects that you describe. One of the things that I know you appreciate is that I, as president, cannot direct the faculty to work on any particular questions or projects. They have to capture their imagination. On the other hand, the kinds of things that you just talked about, ways to design greener housing, ways to design greener communities, as you know, are already capturing the attention of several of our faculty members. And there's an increasing interest in seeing how that work can be done in ways that have application within the community around us. So I can't promise on that, but I can say you're absolutely right, Eve. We do share those interests. Keeping this community diverse in a variety of different respects is something that matters to the university and to our ability to recruit, as well as to the people who live here. I'll just say one other thing in vigorous agreement with the conditions of your question, which is we do, as I think your question recognized, face all sorts of economic conditions, right? The demand for housing coming out of the pandemic, the fact that Princeton is a very desirable place to live, which we all appreciate, but which also drives up housing prices, and figuring out what we can do around those boundaries. I don't know, but I appreciate it that you are thinking about this, and we will think about it and see whether or not there are ways that we can make matches or be helpful on that, because I agree it's a shared interest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leticia?
Yes, thank you. I want to start by first congratulating you on a great hire. Although it's a loss to Princeton, to us, to the municipality, Melissa Urias I see it as, although it's a loss to us, it's also a benefit having someone on that side of Nassau Street who understands the needs of our community, to be able to hopefully help in developing programs or initiatives that we can collaborate on to help our community.
We're thrilled to have her on our team, and appreciate that you're willing to think of it as a shared team and be generous about that. So thank you for that.
I do, because something else, it actually is from Melissa's former Department of Human Services. I just wanted to mention that it came up I think it was just last month's meeting, there was a question on how members of our community, now that the hospital isn't here and they have transportation issues, how can they get to the hospital? And many didn't realize that the Tiger Transit was available to the public. So I realized that that's something, I was aware of it, but I realized that that's something that we need to work on making sure that our community knows what services that the university provides is also available to them, not just the Tiger Transit. When the university art museum was there, it was open to everybody. Now it's on Hullfish. It's also free and open to the public. So we need to, I think, if there's any way that we can help to do that outreach to ensure that our community knows what the university has to offer, that it's also for them. And then I also wanted to mention, and on your list of contributions and initiatives, I don't know that it's directly related to a suggestion that I made a couple of years ago. I don't need to take credit for it. I'm not taking, I'm not, but I was so pleased to see the community dining program, the pilot program, to test how students' dining points might be transferable. It's a suggestion I have made, not necessarily just to help our local businesses during the pandemic, but also I had seen that as a need from talking to some of our student volunteers who from students from the university who volunteer on our programs, who I understood that those who don't have the financial means that many of their fellow students have, to be able to experience Princeton and our other dining options. So I hope that this pilot program is successful and it's going to be something that can be expanded and be permanent, to really ensure that those students who might not otherwise be able to dine off campus would be able to do so, and also help our local business community. Lastly, I know, and I know my colleagues will know where I'm going once I start. I'm going to plant a seed because I brought it up. I think that this will be the fourth opportunity that I have to chat with you. And I think I brought it up at our first meeting. But at the time, I didn't know how we could make it happen. I still don't. There's a lot of challenges, but I still want to plant a seed and put it out there that in our community, we have many of our, I would say, our underserved community who have experienced a challenge that many of us don't even pay attention to, are not even aware of, and that is the laundry facilities. There's only one laundromat in town, which happens to be on the other side of town where many of our residents live who need to make use of it. And I'm aware of it because I and many of us see them crossing from one side of town to the other on their bicycles, on foot, pushing strollers loaded with laundry, because there's only one place in town. And like I said, there's challenges that we haven't been able to really be able to figure out how we can address them. One of the biggest challenges is the sewer hookup fees, that even though we have had businesses who have expressed an interest in opening up a laundromat, the hookup fees, which is apparently something that is something that we have no discretion in. But if we can ever figure it out, and if we can ever either working with community partners to make it happen, I'm hopeful that the university would be one of those partners that can help with that.
Letitia, thank you for all those comments. Let me start with what you said about community dining, just because I think you should take some credit for that. We talked with regard to laundry facilities about planting a seed, and that's often what these conversations do. As I said in my answer to Eve earlier, when an invitation gets issued or when an area of common interest is identified, it's not always possible for me to say or for us to say whether we can make something happen or how we can do it, but it often does plant a seed that we're able to work on. And I think you all gave a shout out earlier to Kristen Applegate. I'll join you in that. I mean, one of the things she does is to pick up those threads and help to carry or weave them forward with help from others in the university administration. And certainly we were aware and interested in the town's receptivity to these kinds of programs. I too hope that they will continue. I think they've been a success from the town's perspective, the university's perspective, and importantly, the students' perspective. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with Mayu Takauchi, who is our current undergraduate student government president. And one of the things she was talking about were ways to continue the Tigers in Town project that had been started during the pandemic. And so I'm anxious to get past a lot of the things we did in the pandemic, but interestingly, I think a number of these connections between the town and the university, including at the student level, are things that we might hope will persist, and that I know that a lot of our students have discovered the town in ways where they want to continue to have that kind of engagement. So thank you for pressing us on that, and know that when you make these suggestions, we do try to think about them and identify whether or not there are ways we can move forward. And that's exactly what I'm going to say about the laundry problem. I don't know. There are a number of things I do know things about. Laundry is definitely not one of them, and particularly how to set up the kind of facility that you're describing. But there may be ways that we can be helpful with that. And as with other ideas, we'll see whether or not we can identify something. And then just to conclude on your opening comments about Melissa and others, I did want to make sure to also give a shout out, and maybe she can turn her camera on at least briefly, to Hillary Parker, our Vice President and Secretary, who is here and who has taken over the supervision of both our community and regional affairs offices and our state affairs offices. We are looking to have Hillary work with the outstanding people that we have in those offices already to be able to do even better with regard to some of these suggestions, and to have an integrated and coordinated strategy that will make a difference for the future. So I'm glad we were able to make progress on community dining. I'm not giving up on laundry, but I don't have the solution on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. David was up next, and then Michelle.
Thanks. I am going to focus on something a bit more immediate, inspired by an item that's on our agenda for this evening a little bit later, which is potential change to the traffic pattern on Chambers Street, where the construction for the Graduate Hotel is going to commence shortly. And originally our plan was to have two-way traffic maintained on Chambers. We're finding there are challenges, safety challenges, roadway width challenges related to that. So I don't know if the university's facilities folk or transportation office have done any coordinated planning with our engineering department, but I think that between the reconstruction of Witherspoon Street and this construction on Chambers Street, we're going to be facing some real serious challenges, traffic challenges in the coming year. And I think it would be great if the university could, I know you have, great transportation management program in place for your your employees and staff, faculty, and so forth. I'm not sure what, if anything, is done right now to try and keep visitors to campus off of Nassau Street. But I think that if there's something that can be done to try and divert some of the ordinary traffic, not permanently, but just while this construction is going on, finding places for them to park on campus, and signage to encourage people to stay out of the center of town with their vehicles as much as possible. It's really going to be helpful both to the university and to the town. So I'd love to encourage that kind of collaboration.
David, I appreciate the encouragement, and I may ask Kristen Applegate whether she wants to say anything about the specific questions that you raised. We do spend a lot of time, as I know you do, thinking about traffic. When you take on a leadership position in any of these, whether it's in the community or in a university, you spend a whole lot more time thinking about traffic and related issues than you may have anticipated before going in. I agree that we share a number of interests with the town, and we do try to both for the benefit of our visitors and for the benefit of the town, encourage them to use some of the lots where they can take a shuttle up to the university. But I don't know that I can respond to the specifics that you raised. Kristen, are you able to say anything to that or not?
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for bringing this up. So I think it really is an important town and gown issue. So thanks for raising that. And I'm happy to follow up pending the the resolution of your discussion tonight with you. I'm looking at Michael Laplace, Bernie Hotstovic, all folks that we work with regularly. What we at the university want is for our visitors to come and park in the lots that we have for them, but we don't want them to stay away from downtown. We want them to come and experience campus, but we want them to go across and get something to eat and buy some things in town. So I will commit to following up. David, we can talk tomorrow. Whoever I should talk to, get Charlie Tennyson, our great director of TDM and parking, involved, and maybe to the point that Leticia made earlier, some combined, thoughtful messaging that we can share on both sides of Nassau Street will help us, because I do acknowledge us as someone who works in town every day, who lives in town. You feel that we all know the construction is going to be disruptive, and let's figure out a way to make it, minimally disruptive as we can. So I'm happy to follow up on that. Thanks for the question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I have a few thank yous for you. I mean, the leadership that the university took during COVID for the vaccines on campus, for the updates, just for the leadership in general of what to do. And now I'm really excited to see that the reunions will be back, and not one, but 2 graduations will take place. And, it's really fabulous, but I do appreciate everything that you've done, as everyone else has expressed this evening. And I also really excited to see about Tigers in Town. Tigers in Nassau, they were terrific. They came to the Merchants Association many times and took on several nice projects and really worked really beautifully with our business community. And, like I said, Tigers in Town, I think we've already expressed how much we appreciate that and hope that that continues. So really great stuff. And I just want to give a shout out to Kristen. I don't know how aware you are that she has been one of our leaders in terms of thought leader for our group that has now passed the ordinance last week to create a special improvement district for our business community. And Kristen sat on all those meetings, every one of them, and has really given us a great amount of input. And now will be a board member for this as a major stakeholder. It's really important that the university be part of this. And I just want to say, we're planting seeds this evening. I mean, one of the things that we'd really like to see in the business community that can come out of a special improvement district is more investment in small entrepreneurship, particularly minority entrepreneurship, which is really something that is important to having a real mix in our town. It creates not just diversity, but resiliency and sustainability for our town. So something to think about. I know that there's the Innovation Center. So there may be some synergies there and ways we can work together. So I just wanted to mention that, and thank you very much for having Kristen be such a large part of this.
Well, I second and applaud your thanks to Kristen. Obviously, we think having a strong business community in the town of Princeton is really important for our campus. So we appreciate that the work the town has been doing to create that district, which we think will make business stronger, and are really pleased to have been able to play a part in that. At the same time, Michelle, I also want to appreciate your thanks, and I feel like in many respects here, I'm standing on the shoulders of others and benefiting from hard work that they've done. So I want to give shout outs on that, a number of people like our Provost Debbie Prentice, our Executive Vice President Trebby Williams, our General Counsel Ramona Romero, who's been indispensable in these efforts, our Vice President for University Services Chad Klaus, and Robin Izzo, who has worked so closely, our Executive Director of Environmental Health and Safety, works so closely with Jeff Grosser. I get the benefit of being able to talk to you and hear your thanks, and of course I'll pass them along, but I do so very aware that those are the people who did the really hard work, and a whole cast of others across the initiatives that we are talking about. With regard to things related to innovation, as you know, this is a major interest for the university going forward. We know that when people are engaged in those kinds of enterprises and want to do entrepreneurial work, they would love to be in the town of Princeton. So if we can find ways to make that happen and facilitate that together, I think that would be a really good thing.
It sounds wonderful, and we certainly want them here. So we appreciate that very much.
I'm delighted to hear that.
Thank you.
Leighton?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. President, first, thank you for being here tonight. I'm new to the process, so I just first want to tell you thank you for all that you do, and also for your community engagement team headed by Kristen Applegate. Thank you also for the exhaustive report you sent this afternoon. I looked over it. It took some time, and I would recommend to all my fellow Princetonians to take a look at the report. I actually was shocked at how much I did not know of the engagement with many aspects of the university. So hats off to that. I want to flip it on you just a little bit. I think we in Princeton always look across Nassau Street and want to know what the university can do for us. My question to you is, it's obvious to everyone in Princeton that your trustees and your board take deep looks into the future and make serious plans about where you're going and take good steps to get there. What in your estimation should or could the future of Princeton look like to provide greater synergy, greater diversity, greater welcoming, a greater infrastructure and hub for your world-renowned university? How can we help you in that regard?
Well, I really appreciate the question, Leighton, and I will say, we're very appreciative of the ability to be part of the community planning process that is getting started through the town. I think we've already touched on lots of the things that really matter to the university, right? We want to have a thriving community around us. As Eve said in her question, as she began earlier in the evening, we recruit people here. We want our faculty, our staff, our students to feel very proud of being Princetonians in two different senses, as members of the university and as members of the town community. And it's a huge attraction for people to be able to interact with this community broadly. That means caring about diversity in the town in the way that Eve and I discussed. It means having opportunities for interaction. It means knowing that there's a welcome mat out, as Michelle talked about, for business ventures that might emanate from the university. It means, as David raised in his question, shared concerns about traffic and about the environment. So I think we have a community of interests around these questions. I think the more that can be done, so that as we're looking for solutions, we can find win-win solutions. One of the reasons that I'm really grateful for this annual conversation is that it certainly put us in a position where, if we went into the pandemic and we needed to partner with one another in constructive ways, we knew one another, and that element of trust was there. So I think we have shared interests. We're also going to disagree sometimes, right? There are going to be things where maybe our interests may not be aligned, but even there, I think if we're able to have those constructive conversations, we're going to be able to find good solutions. So I think what we both need to be able to recognize is that we are fortunate to live in a tremendous community that is defined both by the town and by the university. At least in my estimation, that community has continued in most ways to get better over time. I was a student here long ago. It seems ages ago, according to our current students, and Princeton was a nice place at that time. I think it's a better place to be today, but with a set of challenges that you all contend with and we contend with. And let's look forward to being able to have those conversations as issues arise between us, and to be able to look outward into the future as we try to deal with these things where we have common concerns.
Thank you. Mia?
So this is a slightly different question. It's on the other end of the spectrum from traffic, and it has to do with speech and the First Amendment and information and truth and different truths. And that is very much what keeps me up at night these days. The context of this is that early in my career, I worked at Human Rights Watch monitoring the Helsinki Accords and what was then the Soviet Union. And in the past few weeks, I've watched Russia regress to a level of repression that I haven't seen since the 80s. And it's really been shocking. On the other hand, what we have in this country are whole groups of people who believe totally different and opposite truths and live in information ecosystems that basically confirm the truth that they believe. And we in this country have regressed, I think, to the point of a level of polarization that we also haven't seen since pre-Civil War times. And the whole promise of the information age and the internet, in which somehow that would enhance knowledge and our enlightenment and information and truth, has actually now seemed to have brought us back to a level of tribalism and polarization that is really quite terrifying. And I am just wondering, how you, as the president of this university, which is obviously world renowned and sets the tone and in many respects, what you feel the role of higher education and universities are in addressing this issue, because I know there's also a lot of debate about the extent to which free speech and speech in general and information is in the university setting is or is not as robust as it may once have been. And I'll just say, bringing it back to the council level, a personal priority for me as a council member has been to try to promote civil discourse in everything that we discuss here in town, to try to avoid in our own small way the level of polarization. I did say when we were, on about our 8th meeting on Witherspoon Street that it was, after all, just a road. Anyway, so that's a really broad question, and you can answer it however you want, but I'm sure this must be something that keeps you up at night as well. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yes, me, it is something that keeps me up at night. And I thank you for raising it. I think what you've described, and I agree with just about all of the premises in your question, it is one of the most profound challenges facing us as a society, and something that any university president and any university has to care deeply about. I was particularly struck. I don't know whether you had a chance to hear Maria Ressa when she was here, or whether you've read her other work, but she was very much focused on this in ways that I found completely compelling. She said, and I agree, that much of the crisis that we are facing is attributable to changing modes of communication, and in particular to the incentives that are built into social media, and what that does to all of us as participants in civic discourse, right? Or what is increasingly uncivil civic discourse. But we now have increasing evidence of what many people have been saying for a long time, which is that social media is configured in ways that basically feeds our anger. It's one thing to be polarized in the sense of simply disagreeing. It's another thing to really feel anger or enmity to those with whom you disagree. And that makes it very hard to have democratic conversations or civil conversations. But anger rivets eyeballs to screens, and a lot of these algorithms feed that. And you deal with it, I deal with it, we all deal with it in our society. So we have to be concerned about this on university campuses. The other thing Maria said when she was here was look, to have democracy, you have to have truth seeking, right? The ability to get to solutions to hard problems, whether they're about roads and traffic or about anything else, depends at a minimum on our ability to form relationships with one another through speech, but also to get out the facts so that we can at least agree, if we're talking about a pandemic, for example, on whether vaccines are safe and effective, right? Or that masks have an important role to play at certain stages in a pandemic. And if you can't have that kind of truth-seeking going on, then democracy becomes very vulnerable and hard to maintain. So part of what we have to do, and you alluded to this, is to maintain protections for free speech, yes, but more than that, truth-seeking and civil discourse on college campuses. I believe that the situation is contested but very strong on our campus and others. I am committed to free speech and spend a lot of time defending free speech on our campus. But I also tell people, look, you can have free speech without having truth-seeking or civil discourse, right? If you can have people hurling insults at one another nonstop, and that is perfectly free speech. In order to really get something done, you need structured speech, and structured speech means we all have to censor some of the things that might get in the way of civil discourse. We have to respect one another so that it's not only that people are free to say what they want to say, but that they feel they have a place at the table and that they are being heard. We have to have vigorous exposition of different positions. And then we have to have a common agreement. We're doing that not just for the performance of it, but in order to get at the truth. And I think universities are critical institutions at teaching that and at being a venue for that. I wish, Mia, that I had an answer which would say, okay, and now all we need to do in order to solve this is the following. I don't. I do think it's a critical project for us. I've started to think about it in terms of educating citizens for the social media age. I think that requires making sure that our students are sensitive to the kinds of concerns that you raised in your question about 4 years ago. And I was just, again, talking to some of our current seniors about it. 4 years ago, I assigned a book about what social media was doing to all of us as individuals as we tried to plan, and doing to us as a society, in order to get students thinking about these issues and at least make them mindful of it. I think the solutions will probably come from that younger generation that is able to think creatively about these kinds of issues. And so we're going to have to do more to train those kinds of citizenship tools, or provide those kinds of citizenship tools to our students. We're going to have to continue to do well what we've done in the past, which is to teach critical thinking, to model critical thinking that's essential to dealing with these issues. And I think we're going to have to support scholars who are tackling the kinds of questions that you raised. There was an interesting article in the New York Times this morning about First Amendment scholars who are thinking that some of the disinformation that was spread through news networks or social media may actually be libelous, even under the very protective strictures of First Amendment law. And people who are very strong defenders of free speech are also saying, look, there also have to be limits to free speech when people are deliberately speaking falsehood that subverts reputations or the truth. And I think we're in an age now where, again, even for people like me, and I taught a class on free speech last year. I am a strong believer in free speech. I think of myself as a free speech hawk, but that doesn't mean there are no limits that every time the word gets invoked, it should cut off all argument. And I think as we address the kinds of questions that you're raising right now about how do we make sure that we've got the civil truth-seeking discourse with robust argument and disagreement. We're really going to have to think about what those norms mean in a communications environment that is really radically quite different from what we had in the past. So I think at the end of the day, I'm probably treating your question the way I treated Eve's first question, as an invitation. Yes, let's work together on this. And I wish I could give you something more concrete at this point, but I cannot think of a more important problem to raise.
There are no easy answers, but it's good to know you're focused on it.
I'm with you
Right.
and also being kept up at night. So
Okay, great.
Chris, I
Thank
want to,
you.
yeah, thanks, Mia. I just want to add that our thanks to both Hillary and Kristen for being available to us so often on so many different topics, and the help and advice and just the answers to questions that they have provided to us over an extended period to the two of them, which is, I know they reflect the culture of the university. So we truly appreciate that. And if I listen to everything that went back and forth tonight, I kind of hear the whole theme about joint planning, joint initiatives. I think the word joint is the key word there, and looking forward to exploring how we could do more things together. As you said, we're not always going to agree, but talking it out certainly helps quite a bit. So I think I think I'm very encouraged for the future and all that we could do together for this town and the university.
I really am too. And thank you all for a conversation, and thank you for your continuing partnership. It's tremendous that we're able to move together this week.
Thanks again. Have a good evening.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye, Kristen. Bye, Hillary. Okay. That
Thank
rolls
you.
us into our announcements and reports. So Leticia was the quickest.
Quickest draw. So I have two, and you'll be pleased to hear mine are very brief. So I have two very brief announcements. One is on behalf of our Human Services Department. The Human Services is currently assisting Ukrainian refugee family that arrived very recently in the US. They arrived on March 9th. The department is coordinating efforts with local agencies in anticipation of more refugee families arriving. Anyone interested in learning how they can assist, please feel free to reach out to our Human Services Director. And the other announcement is on behalf of our Civil Rights Commission. A subcommittee of the Civil Rights Commission has been discussing the topic of reparations, and they will be presenting to council at our April 11th meeting a proposed resolution that would establish an ad hoc subcommittee of the CRC, which would be dedicated to studying and providing local reparation policy recommendations that would include coordinating truth and reconciliation programming. So more to come. I just wanted to give you the heads up.
Thank you, Leticia.
Thank
Eve,
you.
did you have your hand up?
I did. I'm not going to be quite as brief, unfortunately. I want to say that things coming up on our agenda at our next meeting on the 28th, we'll hear reports about from both the library director and from the director of the Senior Resource Center. So that's just a stay tuned. On behalf of the Personnel Committee, I want to announce that Princeton has hired a community compliance officer who, among other things, will be enforcing the ordinance that we passed in October, which restricts the use of gas lawn maintenance equipment. As always, I'll say that we are not in this to collect fines, but hopefully to help educate people, and that's certainly the approach that the community compliance officer will be directed to take. But anyway, that's been a long time in the making, and I'm really excited that this person will start next month. So look forward to meeting them. I just want to give a heads up about our very kind and talented animal control officer, Jim Ferry, had his 15 minutes of fame this week doing a very unusual animal rescue. It was covered by ABC News out of Philadelphia. So look for it. It'll provide, 90 seconds to 2 minutes of entertainment, a lighthearted entertainment that I think is needed in this day and age. I want to reiterate that in a little bit over 2 weeks, we'll be having our special meeting on cannabis. That is Tuesday, March 29th, starting at 7 p.m. And as we approach that time, the link will be available in the council agenda and packet. The Princeton Senior Resource Center has a spring fundraiser coming up on a week from today. Princeton native Manmush Zamrodi, who is the host of NPR's TED Radio Hour, will be appearing and headlining the benefit. Again, I've spoken about this before, but we've arranged for motor vehicle services to come to Princeton to provide walk-in services here through their mobile motor vehicle services. So the first date is Tuesday, April 5th. I think all those spots are taken. The next date is Friday, June 24th. And if you are interested in this, and you can't do all things, but you can renew your license registration, get a real ID and various other things, you can find the email to register in our municipal newsletter. And finally, on Friday, I gave a brief presentation to a coalition of groups that is working on developing something like our sustainable landscaping initiative at a statewide basis. There have been bills introduced, or not introduced, bills proposed, one of which would ban two-stroke gas lawn maintenance equipment from sale in a few years, and one which would help fund the transition to electric equipment. And Assemblywoman Swain, who was the sponsor of the second bill, was on this call, and we talked about ways to get this initiative, which promotes worker health, health of the environment, quiet, and all those things, working to promote that statewide so that other communities can follow in the path that Maplewood and Princeton and other communities that are concerned about these issues. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Other council members with any announcements or reports? Leighton?
Thanks again, Mayor. Just two quick announcements. Just want to give a shout out to Corner House. Corner House, as you know, has been around since 1972, and they are in the process of rewriting or redoing their mission statement, because they are now dealing not only with alcohol and substance abuses, but also with mental health. So I want to congratulate them on doing a new mission statement, and also let you know that March is Mental Health Month, and the Princeton Alcohol and Drug Alliance are working through teens from PDS, Princeton High School, Stewart, and Hunn, and they do an excellent job of helping teens navigate through young adulthood safely. So if you haven't done so, take a look at the website for Corner House and see all the good stuff that's happening there with regard to youth and adults in Princeton. Thank you.
Thanks, Leighton.
Oh, also the Princeton Police Department, also the application process will be beginning next month for Planning for Youth, which is going to happen the third week in August, and it's the Youth Police Academy. It operates Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 1:30, and it is free. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other council announcements or reports? Okay, great. Let's go to public comments for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the public that wants to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? Adam, I see a hand up. Can we bring them over?
Okay, bringing over Sheila.
Okay, and Sheila and anyone else that's going to make a comment, just remember it's a 3-minute limit. If you could say your name and address, and thank you.
Hi, my name's Sheila McLaughlin. I live on Walnut Lane, And I was curious to learn more about, I think I heard something about a plan for a community center in Princeton. Is that right? And could we hear a little bit more about those plans?
Yeah, I would.
I'll
Go
answer
ahead,
that.
Michelle.
Sheila, it's a community center feasibility task force. And we're just looking at what the needs are right now. There's a task force that meets every couple of weeks, and we'll probably be bringing something before council in April, May timeframe. So just look for that and we'll give a report on that at that time.
Okay, if you're looking for any contributions from residents, our family would be very interested in contributing to that effort if you have need. We do have some experience in that. My husband was very involved in building the Camden Community Center on the Camden waterfront.
Oh, really? That's great. Okay, well, let's get in touch with each other on that offline. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. I'll reach out to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sheila. Is there anyone else from the public that has a comment for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, we have I think we had 3 emails come in for items not on the agenda. Leighton, I think you volunteered to handle the first 2.
Give me 1 second, Mayor.
Yep, no problem.
Here. Okay. The first letter reads as follows, and your first letter. Dear members of our Princeton Council, my name is Catherine Iriff. I live at 221 Dodge Lane, in parentheses, since 1979. I listened to the whole of the last meeting and early part of tonight's. It is hard to understand why you have not listened well to the town's residents, but only to a few who did not seem to represent them. If you would, Mayor, I also want to just say, I'm sorry I didn't do this at the top, that these are public comments from items not on the agenda from an earlier meeting, obviously. Residents in the affected area should not have to pay for the parking outside their doors, and they should have 2 free permits for family or friends to be able to visit. If I lived in this area, I believe I would find looking at cars parked outside my door all day and night dreadful. It would take away the peace and tranquility I know. It might also affect my ability to move to another area of town. Many of the businesses are geared towards students. The university, in my view, should provide parking. The empty free buses they use should become several small electric nonstop shuttles dropping off at a few strategic shops from out of town locations. They should not clutter up this district. I oppose this plan. The second letter is from Eileen Bird of Moran Avenue, who writes, Mayor and Council, I support the establishment of cannabis dispensaries in Princeton proper. I am a 30-year-old resident of Princeton. There is an alcohol dispensary at the end of my block, and I would like to have a cannabis dispensary next to it. I'd like it to be as easy for me to buy cannabis to enjoy in my home as a responsible adult as it is to buy a bottle of wine. The alcohol dispensary referred to above is about 1/2 block from an elementary school, and no one seems to mind that. I am more dismayed by the easy access to alcohol in grocery stores than about local cannabis dispensaries. If concerned about proximity of drug dispensaries to schools, why is there an alcohol dispensary close to an elementary school on Nassau Street? There have been recent letters to the editor painting cannabis as a dangerous drug. This reminds me of the old movie, Reefer Madness. Cannabis is widely used in a manner quite similar to alcohol. Most adults consume it while socializing with friends or relaxing after work. And while some consume it for its medical benefits, others use it for therapeutic purposes. Some consume it to alleviate arthritis, relieve a migraine, or because it helps them fall asleep and get a good night's rest. Consuming cannabis is simply something that some adults choose to do, and some specifically choose to do it instead of having a cocktail, beer, or glass of wine. One thing that I would request the Princeton Council to do is to allocate the cannabis dispensary licenses to qualified people of color or women, not to large or out-of-state businesses. For instance, John Boehner, the Republican former Speaker of the House, is on the advisory board of Acreage Holding, a company that cultivates, processes, and disposes cannabis in 11 US states. I think that Princeton cannabis dispensaries should be run by a profit local individuals as well as the town. Best regards.
Thank you, Leighton.
The next one is mine, and this comes from Linder, Jan, and Philvin from 195 Nassau Street, who wrote, "Dear Princeton Mayor and Council, I'm reaching out to you to share some serious concerns I have about the downtown parking discussions and the potential outcome for the employees of small businesses in town. I hope Princeton Council will use this feedback in their ongoing discussions. Since 2008, I'm a Princeton resident and small business owner with an office at 195 Nassau Street. We only have 3 people on staff, including myself. We have been renting the same office since 2008 and have always parked our cars in the streets around our office. First, I'm stunned to notice that whole neighborhoods have been able to carve out a special deal in the past to avoid almost any public parking in their neighborhood. In particular, the area around PHS comes to mind, with wide public streets close to downtown, and almost no public parking is allowed there while the streets are practically empty during the day. These special deals obviously increase the parking pressure on other downtown neighborhoods tremendously. I think all neighborhoods should share equally in the burden for on-street parking by both residents and business employees. Second, Princeton streets are public assets that are being paid for through property taxes, both by residents and business owners, through their monthly lease. Since we all pay property taxes, we all should have access to Princeton's public streets. It's understandable that residents want to be able to park close to their home. However, it's equally understandable that employees from small businesses downtown want to park their cars close to their work as well. Residents should not have special parking rights. When they bought their home downtown, they didn't pay for a guaranteed parking spot in their street either. Third, the Westminster Parking Lot is no workable solution for our small business at all. It's a 15-minute walk, one way, between the parking lot and our office. Not really the best way to retain your staff, in particular on rainy, snowy days. What's the justification to expect that business employees walk such a long distance for a large part through the PHS neighborhood with virtually no parked cars at all? On top of that, paying an additional $1,100 per year in parking fee is a significant amount of money for a small business in addition to the already sky-high Princeton business rents. Overall, the current proposals perpetuate and extend inequity between neighborhoods, as well as between residents and employees who cannot afford living in our town. I feel that Princeton is on a path to make it impossible for small businesses to park their cars at a reasonable distance from their work, since residents' parking gets exclusive rights. This could mean that I'll have no other choice than leave Princeton with our business soon. Unfortunately, I think we'll not be the only ones. I'd love to elaborate further in case you have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. Thank you, Leighton, for reading those emails that came in. I appreciate that. All right, seeing no other hands up, we'll move away from the public comment for items not on the agenda.
Believe there was one more letter, Mayor, that
Right,
Michelle.
but
No?
that's for an item on the agenda.
Got it. Sorry.
No, but thank you. Thank you. It's always good to make sure. I think we have a ordinance to introduce, ordinance 2022-09, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Public hearing would be April 11th, 2022. Is there a motion on that? Thank you, Michelle. David's got the second. All in, oh, I'm sorry, it's a roll call on the ordinance introduction. Hey, Dawn.
I apologize.
Sorry.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, we need to do a roll call on the ordinance introduction?
I apologize. Hold on. Ms. Pearl Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. We have a resolution 22-112, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton to introduce the 2022 municipal budget. I see we have our CFO here also. Okay, hands are flying. Shall we let Sandy say a word or two and then we'll get to the council members?
Thank you, Mayor. This budget that we're planning to introduce tonight takes the recommendation of the Finance Committee along with, I think, a consensus of the rest of council. It is a 2.45% increase, which is about a 1.2 cents increase, which will increase a local residential property that's assessed at the average of $844,000. It will increase their municipal share of taxes by $97. So we eked in just under the $100. You know, we're using a little bit more money in surplus than what we had originally spoke about a couple of weeks ago, but that was absolutely to hold the tax rate down to what we have as.
Thank you. Michelle, you had your hand up too.
Well, I was just making a motion to introduce, and I just will say thank you to Sandy and Bernie. Just great work on this, and we can talk more about the details. I think at the hearing we can, dig into that and talk about it. We did some top level discussions last meeting about the drivers, so I think we're good to go.
Thank you, Michelle. David, did you have a comment or were you seconding the?
I was seconding the introduction.
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
resolution. Yeah.
Yep. Eve.
Sorry, I have a kind of technical. I know we're not discussing the ordinance at introduction, but I found it a little bit difficult to follow in the council packet. I don't know if it was how it was formatted on my screen, but the columns and rows were not always labeled in part, and I found some of it a bit confusing. So I'm just asking, that's supplementary material. So when we have the ordinance hearing, if it's possible to, to provide that in such a way that's a little bit easier to read, I would be very appreciative.
Yeah, I noticed that. I think that you're talking about the spreadsheet, not the revenue and the appropriation one. It was the other spreadsheet that didn't reference anything on the left column.
Exactly. It was just numbers, page after page of numbers. I had no idea what was going on. So
Yeah, I apologize for that. What that actually was the whole spreadsheet, which was all the years that you really didn't need to see. You really I only wanted you to focus on the first 2 pages. So we'll clean that up for the public hearing.
Thank you.
Well, at least the good news is we're reading every page of the agenda package. Are there any other council questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye, raise your hand, something to.
Aye.
It's a roll. Is it? Oh, it's a resolution. I'm sorry.
It's a resolution, yeah.
Aye.
Okay, got everybody there. Thank you. All right, also related to the budget is 22-113, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton approving local budget examination for the 2022 municipal budget. Is there a motion? Layton's got the motion. Michelle's got the second. Sandy, what does that mean?
This is the resolution which gives me the authority to review our budget under a set of criteria. We do this, we're reviewed by the state once every third year. So this is our second year. Next year will be reviewed by the state.
Okay, thanks. It's always good to make sure that people listening know what we're talking about. Any other questions or comments on that resolution? All right, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, next up is the Graduate Hotel. So I think we have, Adam's going to bring some other people in as panelists. I think, oh, there we go. All right, I think we have the whole team over here as panelists. And who's leading us off on behalf of the Graduate Hotel project?
That would be me, Mr. Mayor.
That's what I thought. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
I just want to make sure I got all my guys there. Do we have David? Are you there?
I'm here.
He's there.
Great. Excellent. Great. Thanks. Should I get started?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Christopher DeGrazia from Fagery, Drinker, Biddle, and Reith. Our firm represents Graduate Hotel in connection with the project that you probably all are very familiar with. It's the adaptive reuse of 20 Nassau Street into a hotel. We're very excited about this economic initiative for the downtown area. And we're very close to starting some of the real construction on the site. Recently, we met on site, the graduate team or consultants met on site with public safety officials where they chalked out the two-way traffic plan and construction logistic area. As part of that meeting, the Princeton officials and safety officials had indicated and raised concerns about the two-way traffic. And they were concerned that there was not sufficient width. And they asked us to look at it a little closer. And that's why we're here tonight. We're here to talk about, I know at one time, I wasn't here at that meeting, but at one time, we talked about a two-way traffic plan, and that was approved, and that was going to be done. And based on feedback we received and meetings in the field, it seems like there are safety concerns that we should prioritize and take a look at. So I have a team of consultants here, a few of us that have taken a look at this issue, just to bring it up and discuss it with you. There's a couple of points that we would like to make before getting into some of the details, because I saw some of the concerns raised. In our proposed plan, I know there was not a lot of information. Like I said, we spent some time, took a look at it, and we've come up with what we think is the safest and best approach in this situation. And the plan essentially creates a single-way traffic up in the area of the hotel. To be clear, the remainder of Chambers Street will remain two ways. So, we're prioritizing really two elements. One is safety, and then two is to create as little disturbance to the downtown as possible. Realizing and recognizing that this is a construction site, but we want to prioritize safety, both safety of the construction and also safety of the traveling public going by the site. So as I was saying, once you get past the hotel site, the properties to the north, so Chambers Garage and 16 Chambers, 22 Chambers, 32 Chambers, all those buildings will still have two-way in front of their buildings. So if you're coming out of the garage or coming out of Chambers, 16, 22 Chambers, you could still go left or right out of the buildings there. So we're trying to create a plan that addresses the safety concerns and, like I said, creating as little impact as possible. So unless there's a question off the bat, what I thought we would do is have our construction manager show you a copy of what we believe is a good, solid, safe plan, and to talk about the elements of that plan.
Okay.
Okay. This is David Chipman. He's our construction manager from Hunter Roberts. David, can you share your screen? I think you have the plan available.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I will share. We have two plans to review. This is generally, one plan will be focused on the project site and the corner of both Chambers and Nassau. And the second plan will be overall detour plan around the project site. So
David, is it possible to enlarge this for those of us with older eyes?
So
Thank
I will
you.
start. How does that work? Everybody good?
Much better, thank you.
Great. Okay. So the discussion that we did have with Princeton Engineering and Princeton Police was out in these parking lanes. And I know that there was discussion about two-ways traffic on Chambers Street. But when we come down to lay out where the site construction needs to go for the activity within inside these barriers, we laid out some more dimensions, and the space that's left outside the construction site is 15 feet. When you have a small strip for divided traffic, that is, you're less than 8 feet of traffic. And I don't believe that would be safe for the vehicular traffic in and around, as well as any other pedestrian traffic along the north side of Chambers Street. So we were proposing, like Chris had mentioned, everything north of the hotel construction site would remain two-way. This plan doesn't show the garage, but you can come and go freely from Chambers Street in either direction. The safety consideration also was thought one-way southbound because of the construction work that's currently going on with Witherspoon. I think George will have some further discussions on what is a safe distance on outside the construction area, but maybe just for everybody to understand what is needed on our construction side, and at least in the dimensions. The barrier itself maybe was not discussed when this plan originally came through. Maybe I'll back up a second just for those folks. I was not at the original meeting. I received this project back in December. So as I started to get into the details, that's when I started to realize we could have a little bit of a challenge here. The barrier that separates construction from the public's area is 2 feet wide. So that takes up a dimension on the street. Right now, it's only 2 lanes of traffic and a very narrow parking lane on the northbound side. Inside the area, including the sidewalk, it would be 7 feet. This pink hatched area, it will be sections of scaffold as the building comes up. That will allow our guys to work on the face of the building as the building rises up, and as well have traffic, our construction traffic inside the space, so that maintains safe workspace for us and for the pedestrians around the site. I'll just take it further down to Nassau. We expect this to be throughway traffic so that there's no backing up. We're going to try and reduce the amount of full shutdowns that we have So this will allow dumpsters to stay inside the construction area, and we will either slide out the side gate or pedestrian workers will be able to come and access straight onto Nassau Street. Jumping to the second plan, as we mentioned, only this cross-sectioned area, which is from the far western side of the construction site to Nassau Street, we are proposing to be southbound one-way traffic. This white area here is the garage. So as you can see, there's a good portion of Chamber Street that would still remain two-way. The red or orange arrows just show a flow of traffic with northbound traffic not being permitted on Chamber Street. They would be able to flow down Nassau Street, continue up 206 and around to Paul Robeson Place and still be able to get back to the garage, or turn and go north on Wholefish to still access the business district.
Right.
So under this new plan, the width of the single lane, from what I understand, is sufficient for all types of vehicles, including police, fire, emergency vehicles. There was concern with the two-way of impeding response times by cutting, requiring the traffic to be moved out. The one-way, I think, would make that a little bit more efficient to manage. And you mentioned something, I just want clarification, that if you have an adequate area for the construction, that means there's probably less time than, less times you have to close down the entire street, because you'll be able to do more activities without a full closure. Is that what you were saying?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Areas like a large concrete pour or installation of a large crane would still require a full shutdown, but we're trying to make sure that the flow of construction activity would still allow a single lane of traffic for more often.
Okay.
So yeah, why don't we do questions as each member of the team
Sure.
finishes their presentation, because we'll get lost in remembering all the questions. Michelle, go ahead.
In terms of I just wanted to get the measurements. So how wide are the lanes? I just want to understand why it can't be two-way, and how much construction, because, and this is not really, it's not your fault, but this, we thought, had already been, there was already a promise made in terms of the Witherspoon Street going one way, that this would remain two-way. So I just want to understand what the difference is with why, and why wouldn't be safe as two ways.
So can you zoom in a little bit more so that they could see those numbers? So you could see the scaffolding in pink will be 7 feet. The construction vehicle area, 11 feet. The barrier, which, that was part of the problem why it got narrower, because in the initial plan, it was shown as a line, not realizing the depth or width of the barrier is 2 feet in and of itself. That takes 2 feet of the active area off the table. And that leaves 15.
Can I just interrupt? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Does it have to be 2 feet? Why does it have to be 2 feet?
So the barriers are modular plastic units that get filled with water as they're placed. That is the dimension of those. The other option would be concrete barriers, but they generally have the same. They may be 20 inches, but these are more modular, so that when we have to go do a shutdown, we can move these out of the way quicker than a large 20-foot long concrete barrier.
So there's nothing that could be put there that's less than 2 feet. That's
Not that would be in a safe consider. I'm not sure what was originally discussed in the presentation, but construction sites of this size generally have these barriers. I believe there's a site over off of Witherspoon now or in Palmer Square that has somewhat similar barriers. They need to be able to withstand vehicular impact. So these are the products that we use.
Sorry, Michelle, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Oh, I don't understand. From what I'm looking at here, you have a whole, you have the pink part that's 7
Yes.
feet. Then you have another 11 feet. So you're saying you need 18 feet in this area for just for the construction vehicles and the construction. So how was it ever discussed that this would stay 2 ways? I mean, I don't understand what the change is, because from what was promised a year ago when we discussed the traffic flow and discussed the one-way, and I know one-way Witherspoon may not seem that it's your problem, but this is what was this was the solution to having, you know, and this was what was discussed, was promised that this would stay 2-way during your construction. So I don't see how 2-way was ever on the table according to this plan.
Unfortunately, I can't argue with you. When I lay out the dimensions for what physically needs to happen for our vehicles and for the workers to be in that space, when we took the physical dimensions, we actually spray painted, and that's actually why we asked for that meeting with Princeton Police and Princeton Engineering to come out and take a look at it.
I think fire has weighed in also.
Chris, I haven't spoken to fire. I'm not sure.
Okay. Eve, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be unfair, but I really share Michelle's frustration. There are no changes. This is exactly the same situation that was there when you presented the plans and said a 2-way street was possible. And it's pretty disturbing that the work wasn't done then when you gave us assurances that this was possible. And now you're saying it's not possible. And again, I don't mean to be unfair. If there had been some tangible change that you could point to that said, we thought it was possible, but it turns out this is made of a certain kind of material, or there are utilities or something, but all you're saying is we didn't measure everything correctly. And now the assurances that we've given our business community and other members of the community go, down the toilet, essentially, because again, maybe I'm being unfair, but explain to me how, that you made a mistake. And now you're coming to us and asking us to go back on commitments that we made. I'm very frustrated by this. I mean, I would like, is there anything that you can point to other than we didn't do it right the first time? And if that's so, what are you going to do to compensate for that?
And I just wanted to add, Eve, that, we're just at the beginning of this. This is a really long project, and this is not a good start that the very first.
How can we trust your word on things?
And everything else.
Well, I like to say one thing. It's possible, but not safe. And it's the evaluation of safe that has come in that, there's always a level of degree of different departments taking a look at it and taking a different position. So can you have lanes that are 7.5 feet in width? It's physically possible to have them, but, or 9 feet, I think, at one time when we didn't consider the width of the barrier was a mistake. That's clear. I also think that the scaffolding wasn't sufficiently evaluated. And that's really the 2 elements that led to the issue. But even at the approved plan and no change of the width, the public safety was not comfortable with the width and the layout.
Isn't that your obligation when you bring a plan forward to bring forward a plan that is safe and that has all factors considered?
If I could just real quick, I think the original plan was presented to council as far as a single lane of traffic. Again, I was not there for the very beginning, and I believe it was council's request to make it 2-lane. I don't know what created that concession.
No. I'm sure that it never came to council that we had to go. It was when we had our meetings about, and I know you're not part of it, but the Witherspoon one way, the business community was very clear that it wasn't going to work unless chambers remained 2 ways. And they were very concerned about the construction. And I know it wasn't the Graduate Hotel, but it was staff telling us that during the conversations and the permitting and all the process, that could remain 2 ways. And, we took it on face value. Now, I don't know what was presented to zoning or permitting or planning during the process. We're not, as council, involved in all of those processes with the different permitting pieces. So this is coming to us now, but it's really way after the fact. So I would like to get to the bottom of what was said, when, who, how. I don't really understand how this process could come to the point where you're already started construction, you have your go-aheads, and now we're coming to a point where we're already under construction and underway with the Witherspoon one way, and we're really stuck, and this is going to make a massive traffic downtown.
So do you think we should have our traffic engineer speak a little bit about it and then sort of come back to that? Because we have George Jacomar, he could talk about impacts.
I think we should let the team make their full presentation, but in my mind, where we're going is you guys make your presentation, and then we, through our administrator, will have to talk to our engineering staff, our staff, the police, emergency services, and discuss and get all their feedback. Not that I'm doubting anything you said, but we have nothing in writing. We have no presentation from them that in any way backs up what you're saying. So anyway, we need to have a full conversation. I would envision that you're not going to get a decision tonight, because I think that would be inappropriate for us. We don't have enough information, but I think since you have your team assembled, we should at least hear what everybody has to say.
Mark, I just have
we
one
don't
question.
disagree with that at all.
Okay.
We don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when this came before the zoning board, didn't they approve this under the understanding that it would be 2-way during the construction?
I don't have the resolution in front of me, but my recollection was that we would work with municipal engineer to find an acceptable plan. I don't recall any specific requirement of 2 lanes being opened. I think at the time, that was our expectation.
Yeah, we could, that's part of what we could have the staff put together for us.
I mean, I think that was our expectation that we would, but I don't think it was an actual condition of approval.
Okay. Why don't we do the rest of the presentation, and then we can figure out how to move ahead.
George, would you like to?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is George Jacomar from BFJ Planning. The plan that we're looking at now with one-way circulation, shows a 15-foot lane. The other consideration that we considered is the requirement, or the request by the fire department, to have a total width of about 20 feet. So if they have a fire truck there with the outriggers, that there's enough room for the outriggers. And, that can happen on the sidewalk as well. And along the church here, we have a sidewalk that has a minimum of about 7 feet, and in some locations it's wider. And there's one short segment that has a grassy element, and that's close to Nassau Street. But in general, I think we can count on 7 feet sidewalk. We would suggest that, if we do continue with the one-way operation here as shown, that the traffic lane actually be reduced to 13 feet. I feel that's safer than 15 feet. Cars will not go as fast, and there's no likelihood that 2 cars will try to pass each other with 13 feet. If you have 2 small cars, they can easily pass each other on 15 feet. I'd like to talk also about the general detour plan. So here I think the official detour will be for vehicles that come from the west on Route 206. So they will have information signs that will alert, to the closure of Chamber Street, and they will divert the traffic up Route 206 and then to Paul Robeson, and then get to the downtown area, to the parking garages that way. So that will be the official detour signage. However, we know also there will be other roads that can be used, to enter the access to the downtown area, the downtown businesses. I think that's important to consider, people that know the area, they will continue and use any of the other streets. Witherspoon is still open, maybe it will be slow, but it will be open. Palmer Square, the east leg of Palmer Square will be open also for access, even though there will be construction on that leg as well, but it's not going to be completely closed. So the point is that in general, I think there's still very good access to downtown for vehicular traffic to reach the commercial destinations in downtown Princeton. So that's the general view that we have. Obviously, we had hoped that we could maintain two-way circulation. That was our wish, but I think here there's a concern regarding safety and also the safety of the construction procedure that kind of limited us to that 15-foot dimension that we saw on the plan. And as I mentioned, I would reduce it to 13 feet. I think that would be the safest also for traffic and for the pedestrians that are crossing in Nassau Street and so on. So that's our view on that. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Mr. Jacquemart, did you do any traffic counts to ascertain how many vehicles typically travel northbound on Chambers Street?
We did do traffic counts prior to the pandemic. So when we did the study for the Graduate Hotel, we did traffic counts, and that was in October 2019. And at that time, we had in the morning peak hour 245, I think it was 245 cars driving northbound on Chambers Street. In the afternoon, the number was less. It was 145, if I remember correctly. So that we expect the majority of those, and that's pre-pandemic. So we don't know exactly how many there are today. I imagine there will be less than at that time, but I don't know that for a fact. I think there are probably fewer vehicles driving in the morning peak hour to park. Or also, when we did the counts, the office building on 20 Nassau was still, was partially occupied. It was not 100% occupied anymore at that time, but it was still occupied. So I expect that today there's less than that 245 cars. And I expect also that the majority of them will drive up Route 206 and to get to their destinations, especially particularly to the two parking garages, the one on Halfish and the one on Chambers.
And just as an order of magnitude thing, say you added those 240 cars to 206, what kind of percentage change would you guess that is in the northbound flow on 206?
On Bayard Lane, I don't know exactly how many cars are circulating there, but it would be a significant increase. But at the intersection itself, it's not an increase. It will just be a shift. Today those cars go straight through the intersection of Bayard and Nassau, and in the future they make a left turn. And I expect that many of the cars that know the area, that they will probably not take the detour, that some of them will drive up Palmer Square and Witherspoon. Cars that may go to the Municipal garage on Spring Street, they will probably go up Witherspoon, so that the traffic will be distributed across the streets that still allow the northbound traffic.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Chris, who's next?
Actually, we have our project engineer here, but I don't think he really has anything to add. This was sort of the full scope of the discussion. I think, hey, our interest here is, I think, aligned in many ways, in the sense that, we want to have a safe site. We want to have cars passing safely. We want to have the construction be safe. And also we do want to create as little disturbance as possible. That's a priority. The reality is when you get there and start chalking out how everything fits, it's not as easy as we want it. I just took a look at, I guess I could share my screen here for a second. If you could unshare.
Stop.
If you take a look at, I just went on Google Earth, and this is what the street looks like. Can you see that?
Mhm.
When you start to look at, we're building from the scaffolding from the facade, and then there's a little area to work. And when you start to think about two-way traffic there, it looks really tight. I wasn't, you forget how narrow it could be when you start to put in the nest and the barrier. It gets tight. It's not like, we have constraints that we have to, unfortunately, we're stuck with, and we're trying to find the best course by taking advice from fire, from police, from emergency services, and coming up with something that, like I said, is safe and also, minimizes any type of disturbance the best we can.
Chris, this to me is much, can you share your screen again?
Oh, I'm
'Cause to
sorry.
me, it's so much easier to visualize it when I see the
Yeah,
action.
I'm a
and
picture
I'm a
person,
picture
so I
person.
like to look at things.
I'm not with the maps. So just so I understand, so in front of, so where it says chambers, and so you've got the sidewalk that's really in front of the building, right? That's
Yep.
going to be built, that's going
Yes.
to be demolished. So you have the sidewalk. Then you're going, how far out does the construction site need to go? Does it go to the yellow line? Does it go to where it says chambers? How far out is that construction site going? To
Going
me,
past
like,
the yellow.
it would have to be squeezed more. And my understanding originally was that where the lane of traffic is now, that's northbound, and where the parking cars, where the cars are parked, that would be where the two lanes of traffic would be. And that your site, construction would probably be more like where the chambers to where before the chambers name is. And then you would have the room you'd need for the two-way traffic. There would be no parking. And I guess, are you leaving the whole sidewalk on the one side open?
Yes,
You have-
along the church, that sidewalk, pedestrian sidewalk stays open.
Okay, yeah, well, you need that for the businesses there. All right. So, and so you're saying there's no way to squeeze that construction site?
So-
Because that's what we originally thought. That's what we were told.
I understand. Yes, Chris, this is a great picture just with all the vehicles that are in that parking. If you actually see the vehicles that are parked there, their tires are tight up against the curb. They're barely having the entire vehicle inside the parking stall. But our barrier is going to be just on the other side of that double yellow line. That takes up that dimension.
Right.
Because we also want to get the vehicles out of that common traffic area and into our construction site so that they can come deliver their stuff and move on. And we have that activity to do that. That takes up that dimension. And unfortunately, there's just the constraint of what's left in Chambers Street. That's why we're left with about 15 feet for two-way traffic. I think George would agree it's not the safest condition.
No, I think we need 20 feet for two-way traffic.
Right. So I'd suggest, I think we've heard everything that Chris's team needs to tell us. We need to have Bernie gather our staff that have met on site with them and put together some information for us. And not to get into a debate here during this council meeting, but I think we could also debate, some of our staff could debate with the team what some of the methods and means are as far as what they're constructing, when they're constructing it, how long the scaffolding has to, there's a lot of details that could be gone over to make sure that the request is a need to have versus a nice to have. So I'm not convinced it's a need to have yet, but that's something our staff could get into with them. So anyway, I think, David, I know David has a question, but I think we should thank them. And if we have specific questions, let's ask them, but we're not going to resolve it tonight for sure. David and then Eve.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me like the variables that should be investigated are, one, are there any other dimensions of scaffolding that could be looked at? I mean, I'm not sure that you need 7 feet of scaffolding. I'm not sure, I don't know that much about what the operations are going to be, but that should be looked at. The barrier, Mia always likes to talk about New York City as an example, and I feel for sure I've been through construction sites on the sidewalks of New York where the barrier is a fence, chain link fence, set with concrete blocks, holding the posts up a lot less than 2 feet in width. So that's something else that should be looked at as systems for creating the barrier that could be acceptable, that would be less than the 2 feet that we're talking about. Those are the main things that I have questions.
Thanks, David. Eve?
Yeah, thanks, David. I have no construction expertise, but should it turn out that this is a necessity, I guess what I'd like to ask you to do is, I mean, the idea of doing this for 2 years is really unacceptable. So another thing that I guess I want to ask you about on top of the physical dimensions that David mentioned is the chronological dimensions. What can be done to restrict if there are no alternatives, which may not be, there may be alternatives, but if there are no physical alternatives, what can we do to change this from 2 years to 6 months? So I ask you to think about that. I know, pie in the sky, but one must hope. One must dream.
If they could do it in 6 months, they would be overjoyed. But they're just trying to be realistic with the time frame. I mean, they would love to do that, but I see your point. We'll see what we can do. But I think, unfortunately, the estimate is probably a realistic one.
Mia?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, it seems like the real traffic issue is going to be during 2 times of day. Would it be possible to make it 2-way during rush hour times and possibly at lunchtime, but maybe just during rush hour times? And then I was thinking, don't construction workers usually end around 3 or 4 before the evening rush hour? So maybe it would just be a period in the morning, between, say, I don't know, 8 and 9:30 that you could make it 2-way. I mean, maybe that would be another way to get at this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we'd have to hear from Palmer Square, but maybe there could be some compromises like that.
Okay. Michelle?
And just to wrap up, I think my colleagues made some good suggestions on things we could do. I just want to say this is really unfortunate. I want the Graduate Hotel people to know that we really love this project. We really wanted to welcome you, and it's really unfortunate. And I think you're getting stuck with something, a situation that's really not of your making. It's a situation because of the other construction and the other implications it has for the town. But I just want to tell you that I really am sorry that we're getting off on this foot because we really want to roll out the red carpet and welcome you. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay. David, is that your hand up a second time or is that the same hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to amplify what Eve was saying, which is, I'm sure the 2 years is the right time frame to finish the project,
Yeah.
soup to nuts. But that doesn't mean that you need scaffolding up for 2 years. It doesn't mean that you need, the whole sidewalk plus, the delivery area. So that's
That's a
what you
good
need to
point,
look
yeah.
at when you're looking at the timing, is what's the shortest amount of time that you really need the one-way traffic.
Well, if we're going to use the New York example, David, the scaffolding never comes down.
For this purpose, we're not using the New York example.
Okay. Chris, I don't know if on your side, you guys have any questions for us?
No, this is helpful. I had initially asked exactly on many of those questions like David, you had, I asked about the scaffolding size and it's something special masonry. It's needed for the masonry work. So they need that dimension. But we'll certainly take another closer look. So I guess my question would be, what are the next steps? And I know that fire, police, emergency will all need to weigh in. What is the process?
I would say that Bernie, our administrator, will gather them together. We'll get comments from them. We'll make sure council ask all the questions they can think of to them. And maybe some of the questions will come back to either David or whoever, or to Tom, I don't know. And then in a perfect world, this would be on the agenda for the next council meeting, if we can get as many questions as possible put together and answered before then, right? Because we need to keep the process moving for you guys. So we try to be as timely as possible.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I know we had, I just want to see if anybody from the public has any comments, and I know we have an email to read. So let me just jump to the public first, and then Adam, could you bring, I think Lori's got her hand up. Can we bring her in?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, Lori Raybon from Palmer Square Management. Good evening to everyone. I did send a letter to Mayor and Council. I understood that it was not received in time to be recorded in. I don't know if it's necessary that I read it at this time. Is that appropriate?
If you want to, sure, if you can do it within the 3-minute limit, but I can.
Okay, all right, I'm going to try.
Okay.
Late last night, we became aware of Graduate Hotel's letter to the Mayor and Council requesting a modification to its construction logistics plan presented to Council on November 8th, 2021, that would reduce Chambers Street to a single lane of traffic for the entire duration of the new hotel construction project at 20 Nassau Street. Please be advised that Palmer Square is absolutely opposed to Graduate Hotel's request. This new traffic plan proposal of Graduate Hotel, together with the one-way traffic and regular flow changes, parking disruptions, and street closures being experienced now from both the Witherspoon Street and Triumph Brewery restaurant construction projects, will amount to total traffic gridlock within the CBD, not to mention cause an undue burden upon our Chambers Street and Holfish Street garage operations. Placing additional traffic restrictions on Palmer Square streets, where an already strenuous traffic situation exists, will have wide-ranging negative impacts. There will be more difficulty finding parking. Locals and visitors will be discouraged from coming into the downtown because they do not wish to experience such a traffic nightmare. And most importantly, our retail, commercial, and restaurant tenants will suffer a loss of business. The original Graduate plan from November 2021, proposing two-way traffic on Chambers Street, was consistent with the representations made to the Zoning Board of Adjustment at the time of the variance and site plan application. Impacts of the project upon the traffic flow at Chambers Street was a major topic of discussion during Zoning Board hearings. Zoning Board approval was based on the testimony of Graduate Hotel representatives to maintain two-way traffic on Chambers Street, except for periodic closures, and I believe that was 24 to 25, during certain construction activities. The proposed one-way traffic plan of the hotel is contrary to what was represented before the zoning board. Accordingly, we submit the council cannot act on new construction traffic plan until Graduate Hotel returns to and receives the approval of the zoning board for an amendment to site plan approval. Moreover, as you may know, Palmer Square and Princeton are parties to a ground lease pursuant to which Palmer Square leases from the municipality the land upon which it operates Chambers Street Garage. Municipality is obligated under the lease to ensure that Palmer Square and its users have quiet and peaceable possession of the Chambers Street Garage. Accordingly, we contend the sanctioning by council of further traffic flow constrictions on Chambers Street to a single lane would limit Palmer Square's full enjoyment of the garage property as required under lease. I'm going to forego reading the rest and just say that I have always been in favor of Graduate Hotels. I spoke on their behalf. It's most unfortunate that we were not given any warning of this or consideration of a phone call prior to. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, Michelle, I think you have another email we're going to read.
I have Jessica's email. Yeah, I think, well, Kathy has her hand up. You want to go with Kathy?
Oh, I'm
first?
sorry. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, guys. So obviously, my name is Kathy Clockenbrink. I live on Edge Hill Street. I'm co-owner of Jam and Crepes at 20 Nassau. We are very supportive of the hotel. They have been really good partners with us since they took over the property. This is really disheartening. And my conversation is really to the council. There are a lot of projects going on in this town, and the business community has asked for a view that's 30,000 feet above. And I'm not surprised at what Graduate is asking for. I actually think it has to be done. I applaud you for the safety factor. I walk that street. I look at the garbage. I live that building. I'm not surprised. So we are where we are. And I ask the council to look at this and say, okay, in the totality of all the things that are going on in our community, how do we manage all of these moving parts and keep everybody safe? That is all I'm going to say. I trust people to make good choices. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. We have anyone else from the public that wants to make a comment? All right, Michelle, if you want to read that email. Adam, run the timer when we're reading the emails also, because they shouldn't have any more time than somebody that's actually talking.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, this is ready. Jessica Dory, Kyler Road, and owner of Small World Coffee on Witherspoon. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the recent request by Graduate Hotel to limit traffic on Chambers to one-way during construction. Small World Coffee is opposed to this request. With Witherspoon's one-way traffic and almost daily changes to flow and parking due to construction, we have already seen fewer visitors and customers. There are days when Palmer Square is partially closed down due to construction. This has happened, creating an inability to easily maneuver around town, find parking, make deliveries. Constricting flow on Chambers Street to one way will create gridlock, difficulty finding parking, angry tourists, locals will come to town even less, and the small businesses that are still recovering from the pandemic will be hurt. Not to beat a dead horse, this situation was exactly why flexibility in the design of Witherspoon Street was something that many of us merchants were fighting for. Flexibility creates possibility, and it was why we were skeptical of the timing of the project in conjunction with the hotel's large-scale construction. We were reassured by council that Chambers would remain two-way through construction when the decision to change Witherspoon was made. Please make sure this is upheld. The only solution I can think of that will not create gridlock in town and have a negative impact on customers, visitation, and consequently the health of our business is to follow Andrew Siegel's idea of considering finishing the underground work on Witherspoon and not moving forward with the above ground work until construction is completed on Chambers. Reinstate two-way traffic and parking on Witherspoon in the interim. This will allow traffic to flow far better and allow the town to also make up for lost parking spots on Chambers. This may not be a popular idea. However, in order for merchants to thrive, the town must be accessible. Thank you for your time. I know this is a difficult juncture that we are at. And I'm hopeful that council will consider the needs of the businesses that are already open, trying to attract customers to town through all of this construction. Jessica.
Thanks for reading that, Michelle. Okay.
Task.
Last shot at questions by anybody on council, or Chris, anybody on your side before we thank you and say goodnight to you.
Is there anyone on our side that has anything to add? I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we'll be in touch very soon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we have a public hearing on an ordinance, and that is ordinance 2022-07, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton modifying the composition of the liaisons to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Is there a motion on that?
I'll motion that.
Your motion. Okay, you make the motion. And Michelle, you're going to second? Okay. Questions, comments on the motion? David?
Yeah, I just want to comment that I feel like this can be an opportunity for PBAC to build relationships with members of multiple departments that the work of those departments does relate to and impact the work that the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee does. For instance, the police department, the public works, as well as engineering, as well as planning. So I see it as an opportunity, but I do want to say that I really want to work with the administration, with staff, to set up those kinds of relationships with the various departments so that PBAC really feels comfortable interacting with and inviting representatives from the departments to our meetings to work with us as we try to make the best recommendations to council for improvements going forward.
So, yeah, I hear that. Thank you. I guess my question is, in the wording here, it simply says consisting of staff and or other resource persons as may be appropriate. Who determines what is appropriate, how often, how many, etc.? So is it understood or assumed that that's the administrator, or do we need to say as to who does that? Because are we just doing a handshake here? I'm just curious.
Deanna is not here, but since I'm the chair of infrastructure and operations, the committee, I think I'll speak to this since she's not here, unless Jim, if you want to speak up, let me know. But basically, I think the feeling of staff is that given their workload, which is admittedly excessive on a regular basis, they need to be able to manage that, and they felt that it's not always useful for them to attend every single meeting, and it is rare. We don't actually have a staff liaison, for example, to the Environmental Commission or to many other. I'm not sure what the origin of this was, but it is the feeling of staff that it is not a productive arrangement. They have requested for that arrangement to be changed. There seems to be an ongoing interplay between the administrator, the staff, and the committee. I think it would be, they feel like it is a more productive situation for everyone to decide depending on the theme of the meeting, which staff member, and it might be someone from engineering, it might be someone from planning, who might be the appropriate person to attend. But the bottom line from my perspective is that this has been not a casual request from staff. It is long in the making, and they feel pretty strongly about it. And as the chair of that department, I am supporting their request.
Right. Okay, Mia, I hear you, and I totally understand that. That's why I asked the question as to who is going to make the determination as to what is appropriate. So I don't want to have, if we were trying to make everyone content at some point, both the committee and the staff, then it has to be clear as to who's making that determination. I assume it's the administrator.
I would
But-
say so.
Right? I just want to make sure we're all going into this with the same understanding. So.
Yes,
okay.
Mayor, to your question about whether the ordinance should be more specific as to that, I would advise against it. This language is in other parts of the code as well, dealing with some of the other BCCs, I think like the Public Transit Advisory Committee. Typically, these are just dealt with, as you indicated. Administratively, I would leave that flexibility in place by not trying to be overly specific.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that it's clear what the expectation is. And if 18 months from now, somebody says, well, who is this who deems it's appropriate? We have the same answer. So thank you.
Ultimately, the administrator, yes.
Okay. Michael, I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to quickly, for the record, inform the council and you that over a year ago, the engineering department asked planning to help by staffing the Bike and Ped Advisory Committee meetings, and we were glad to do so. And we had regularly attended the meetings and took notes and reported back to engineering and the council. But it was the request of the committee itself to have engineering there because a lot of times their questions seem to be of more of an operations or maintenance nature as opposed to planning.
Thank you, Mark. David?
Yeah, for one thing, I just wanted to mention there are other departments where the work intersects with what PBAC does. So for instance, recreation has some relationship, when we're talking about trails.
Yep.
Even the Board of Health, as we're working on Vision Zero, we're looking at safety, as a public health issue. So there are many areas. I just want to reiterate what I was saying. I think the committee really appreciates the planning's willingness to step in to the breach over the last year and a half. I think engineering, is wonderful in agreeing. PBAC had requested a special meeting to talk about Witherspoon Phase 2, and engineering set that up. It's not like we're being orphaned, abandoned by the engineering department. I really am trying to, and I think that I agree with Trishka that this should be something that can be handled administratively and flexibly. But I also, would appreciate administration's help in helping PBAC to make connections with the range of staff that I've just mentioned, so that we know we have somebody we can reach out to when we have a question about enforcement. Who's the right person on the police force to reach out to, invite them to a meeting. Who's the right person in recreation department if we want to talk about allowing off-road, mountain bikes on trails in mountain woods, things like that, and mountain lakes. So I think that the ordinance is fine the way it is, but we'd like to work with staff going forward to make those kinds of connections and make the relationships with all the departments productive.
Okay, thanks, David. Eve?
Thanks, Mayor. I have, I'm not sure who I'm asking this to. My understanding is that connections with staff were made by the liaison, the council liaison, and that I've been told many times that it's not necessarily appropriate for a member of a BCC to reach out directly to staff, but that should get channeled through the council liaison. So I just want to clarify, when you say PBAC, do you mean like via you? Like if you need David, you want to work with somebody in the police, you can reach out to Bernie and Bernie can say, oh yeah, this is the right person to work with? Or are you saying that people from the BCC should be reaching out directly to staff, which I have to say.
So typically with PBAC, the chair has been empowered to have direct conversation with staff. Certainly not, and I think that's true for other BCCs that I've served on as well, or served as liaison to as well. Other members of council can correct me if they think that's not appropriate, but I think that that's the way we've tried to channel it over the whole time that I've been involved with PBAC, which extends before I was even on council, was that there was a clear directive that rank and file members were not to reach out to staff, but that the chair and the council liaison together, essentially would be empowered to do that.
I would say the fact that we're talking about changing, the fact that we have this ordinance in front of us means that what happens now is somewhat problematic. So I would suggest as an overall, most of the time rule is that it should be the council liaison reaching out on behalf of whatever BCC it is to the administrator, in which I think is probably what you were getting at, Eve. So I don't mean to steal your thunder, so to speak, but right, because you're putting staff in an awkward position if they now have to explain to the chair of some BCC or another member that might be contacting them as to why they shouldn't have to explain their workload necessarily to a member of a BCC. Really, I mean, I think the administrator and the council liaison should be able to handle that. And anyway, I just think it's a better process, but.
That I think was the way that it has in many occasions in recent years been expressed as the way it should work. Then of course, in the moment, sometimes it doesn't work and then everything gets sloppy, but that is definitely the way it should work and what is really the appropriate way for our staff to be treated.
Yeah, and I think over time with any BCC, and not to just focus on this one, between the administrator, whoever the council liaison is to whichever group it is, and the chair, they'll all figure out the best way to do it. So we don't have to, it might not be 100% of the time, but
why there is a liaison.
yeah.
Otherwise, there's really not necessarily a point.
Yeah, and I think it's important. We've said many times, staff does not work for the BCCs. So if the BCC does not have to go through somebody to get to staff, it really blurs that line. Mm-hmm. And again, can create a problem for staff, which I think should not, we should try to limit the opportunity for that problem to be created.
Okay, as long as it's consistent for all the BCCs.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree, David. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Eve?
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify one thing. Thank you, Mark, for explicating what I was saying. But I think sometimes on a particular issue, staff in the BCC chair might, like a first email is sent and then there's a follow-up. In that case, I don't think the council liaison has to be, if you're working on a particular issue that's going back and forth. But when a new issue is introduced, then I think that should, what I try to do is something that comes through the council member to make sure that, staff time is allocated in a way that's reasonable and with the full knowledge and, input of the administrator. So I just want to clarify that I'm not saying that every single exchange on a continuing issue needs to go through the council liaison.
Yeah. I would say the majority of it's probably going to, but not everything. And again, it's hard to define every instance in just a conversation like this. But as you said, a new issue comes up, the council liaison and the administrator may jointly decide for the chair, hey, on this, you're just going to go right to whoever. But that should be a conscious decision. And that staff member should know, hey, wait a minute, now they're starting to overload me. They just go back to the administrator and or council liaison and say, wait a minute, this is now getting untenable. You guys got to jump in and bail me out here. And that we do so. So anyway, it's kind of hard to define exactly forever. But
so I think we beat this issue to death.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I was just about to say, are there any other questions so we can move on? Okay, it's a roll call vote.
Are you going to ask for public? This is a public hearing, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, David. Very good point. I didn't see any hands up, but anyone from the public? wish to comment? All right, seeing none. Now I'll ask for the roll call vote.
Ms. Pearl Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, now we're going to go to our resolutions, and just a reminder that we're adding 3 resolutions that weren't on the agenda but did get emailed to all the council members earlier today. And I believe Frank Regan will be joining us for those resolutions when we get to them. We have about 5 to do, 3 to do before we get to those. So the first resolution is 22-114, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton rejecting the bid for the purchase and installation of 1 in-channel grinder for the North Ridge Pump Station and authorizing the re-advertisement of said project. Is there a motion on that? Thank you, Michelle. Leighton's got the second. Any questions on that? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22-115, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement in the not to exceed amount of $104,911.10 with Advanced Infrastructure Design, Inc., also AID, for roadway condition assessment, physical inventory of additional assets, asphalt thickness estimation, and pavement treatment recommendations for all municipal roads. Is there a motion on that? Eve, thank you very much. David's got the second. Questions or comments on that? Eve and then David?
I have quite a number of questions. First of all, I'm so thrilled that we're doing this, David. I don't know if this was in the works before, but I know it was something you were advocating for, so thank you. I think it's really important to bring a kind of metric-driven, clarity to how we allocate funds and repair our roads. But Jim, I have some questions that I think you're going to be on board to answer. So, I have a couple of extracts from the resolution or the description of what aid. AID. Is it AID? Is it aid?
Yeah, they go by AID. They don't say aid.
Aid sounds a little odd, but okay. So AID said, so on one hand, they say that there's something called the HPMS and the Highway Performance Monitoring System, which houses inventory information for all the nation's public roads as certified by state governments and updated on an annual basis. All roads open to public travel are reported in HPMS regardless of ownership. So if that already exists, then what are we doing? That's my first question, because it sounded like
the only thing in HPMS about our roads right now is the fact that they exist.
Okay.
There's no inventory. Our process right now is seat of the pants. We drive out on a road and we say, oh, this road looks like it needs to be milled and paved. What they're going to do is to, go ahead.
Yeah, no, the term in there was inventory information. So it seems like that's what we're doing. So but now I understand what you're saying. That's not an accurate description of what they do. Inventory information is maybe not existence is what you're talking about. So then I have a few more questions. So once this is done, might this be something that's accessible by the community? Could I, for example, look out on my street and go, wow, look at those potholes. I wonder when my street is going to be paved, or what's the plan for my particular street? And might this be something that could be available to the community to use in that way, sort of as, part of a GIS system? Or
that would be a policy decision. We do plan on putting this information into our GIS database. Whether or not we decide to make that a public facing part of our data. There is some data that we don't have public facing, but we can discuss that. I don't think it's been discussed to that level yet.
Eve, I just want to explain, my understanding of this is that this is a very technical analysis, and then it will basically be up to our department to take that analysis and put it into a prioritization. Now, whether, you know, I mean, I think this will be very helpful because we often get questions from the public about why was that road chosen and not my road? And visibly my road looks like it needs it more than that road. And so this will provide the data basis for staff to be able to say, well, here's why. On the other hand, if they have their own, you know, list of here's what we're planning to do, this road, that road, that road, I imagine that if that were a public document, it might engender a great deal of some problematic interactions about, well, the data may say this, but we still really feel that our road, you know, I'm somewhat agnostic on it, but I'm not sure that we necessarily want to start that.
I understand what you're saying, but I know there are communities that have a lot of information on their, you know, GIS or other systems where the burden on like staff or the clerk or whatever to answer questions, and also that people in the community can just kind of see, oh, you know, it's slated for what, I'm not going to use the right technical term, but, you know, remilling in 2 years. But there's this big pothole I'll call, or it's slated to be paved in 2 weeks. So I'm not going to call about the pothole, so that a basic amount of information. And you know, I'd want to look at what other communities do, but thanks for that input, Mia. That's certainly something to consider. So just 2 more questions that I think are smaller. So one thing that really struck me in this proposal, I'm just going to quote from it. The municipality can be proactive in its pavement program, maintaining smooth riding roads by making data-driven decisions that employ a best first approach rather than a worst first mentality that chases poor pavements in a vicious cycle of fiscal futility. I love that sentence. But, you know, my assumption is that, of course, you're going to address the roads that are worst first. And so, because, and please, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to explain it all to me, but like, how do you move from a situation where like, wow, my street is the worst street in the entire city and, you know, has to be dealt with, to something where you're addressing the crises, and yet at the same time, you know, planning for the future? Like, does that require in the near term, like extra expense to kind of build yourself into a situation? If you could just kind of talk me through how this might work in practice.
Sure. A robust pavement management system, which is what we hope to develop out of this, will not actually result in us attacking the worst roads first, because the worst roads may need to be completely reconstructed, which take a large amount of the capital program right out of the budget. What this will do is help us to prioritize those roads and treat them before they become bad, so that we extend the service life of those roads with the limited dollars we might have while we gather up the funds that we need to do those big projects. What we're doing right now, and what most municipalities are doing right now, is the road starts to deteriorate, they mill to, they put back to. There are other techniques that can be used, like microsurfacing and fog seals and slurry seals. There's a whole gamut of thin overlays that can be placed before the pavement starts to deteriorate that will give us 5, 6, 7 more years on a pavement. And the ones that are in really bad shape, those are the ones where we have to we have to go and remove pavement and put back pavement, sometimes rebuild the entire pavement box. So this will help us to prioritize those. Right now our program is mill to, put back to, no matter what we're doing to the road. And it could be a waste of money. It could be it could be the right treatment, but we don't know because we don't have a really good handle on what we have.
Thank you. That was really helpful, Jim. I just have one more quick question. There was some money for additional physical inventory of additional assets of interest. And I know sidewalks were mentioned, I think, and I'm wondering, is there anything else in there? I know signs are one option, or is it just sidewalks that we're doing?
Well, they'll pick up all of the assets. I mean, they're going to be scanning, so they'll be picking up trees. They'll be picking up any of the roadside elements that are there with that portion. And we were not considering doing that because we were trying to save a little money, but PBAC said, no, this would be very helpful. So we decided to add it back in.
Now, it seems like a pretty modest amount given the size of the contract for the additional information. So yeah, okay, thank you. I cede my time to others.
Thanks, David.
You're muted, David.
Thank you. So I guess the one other thing was pavement thickness, and it sounds like that, which was a bit alternate, and you're doing that piece as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. And the one other thing I wanted to say regarding how pavement projects get prioritized, and Jim just went into great depth about how the pavement condition doesn't necessarily dictate which project is next, but not only because of this whole question of where should we be doing the less expensive intervention to extend the life of the road, but I think also, and I've said this before, that the amount of traffic that travels on a road should also be taken into consideration. So, you could have a road that's in crappy shape, but only sees 10 cars a day. And while you'd like to fix it, it's more important to fix a different road that might be in a little bit better shape, but sees 1,100 cars a day. So yeah, the usage has to be a part of the calculus in terms of prioritizing the project. So even if we shared all of this information on GIS, if we made it public facing, I have the same concern I think Mia was talking about, which is that essentially a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And we would be giving our residents a little knowledge and not the knowledge that would really give them an informed view of when their road should be done. It would be an uninformed view that, oh, my road deserves to be done when they don't have all the information. So I think that's probably not a direction I would want to go in.
Okay. And luckily for tonight, we're just approving the expenditure and not what we're going to do with the information. So I'm just saying that, right? Sorry, but it's anyway, other questions or comments on the resolution itself?
I'm glad we're doing it. This is very exciting.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Okay. Seeing no other comments, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
22-116, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing the purchase of 0.133 wetland mitigation credits and 0.265 zone mitigation credits from Cranberry Run LLC in the not to exceed amount of $161,190 for corrective action repairs at the Princeton Sanitary Landfill, i.e. River Road.
Can we have an explanation? Or I'll move it, but
Thank you. Is there Eve's got the second? Okay. Who's Jim, Bernie, who's
Bernie, you probably know more about it than I do.
I would be incorrect.
Oh, that would be incorrect. This is related to all of the work that we're doing at the landfill to abide by the NJDEP's settlement with us, and part of it is when we're doing the mitigation that we have to do, we are impacting some wetlands, and we have to buy wetland credits because we don't have anywhere else to construct them in close proximity to the landfill.
Okay. Eve?
So the credits we're buying are for a project in Cranberry, and there's nothing like within our, I guess I don't understand. I accept that
It's not, yeah, sorry. It's not a project in Cranberry. It's that there is a wetlands bank, and there are wetlands in Cranberry that have been placed into the bank, and we can purchase the credits from that wetlands bank. So we're not creating new wetlands. It's
Right,
existing
I understand
wetlands
that.
are
So-
being protected with our money,
But we have wetlands here in Princeton.
but they're not banked.
I'm sorry.
There's
could
a-
you
there's a
explain
statewide
that
wetlands-
concept?
Yeah, there's a statewide wetlands bank that property owners and municipalities can place encumber the land and put a conservation easement around it in the interest of saving the wetlands, but they can put it into a bank that can be used to offset wetlands that are being filled in other locations.
Right, so it's not that the wetlands are necessarily in Cranberry. The money's going into a fund that's named Cranberry Run LLC. And my understanding, Jim, is that they could be purchasing wetlands anywhere in the state. It's not necessarily in Cranberry.
Okay, yeah, that could be correct. I'm not, like I said.
I think it is, because we had to
I'm not
go
100%
through
sure.
the same thing for a project I did recently in town, or a couple of years ago. But it's in other words, you're putting into a fund, so somewhere wetlands are being preserved that we cannot create ourselves.
Thank you.
Do we know why none of our wetlands here are banked?
Well,
I think not.
I think in this specific case, it's a matter of creating or recreating wetlands that we've disturbed or destroyed by stuff that was done at the landfill. And the other thing is DEP, when you go in front of DEP and ask them for a mitigation plan, they're likely to tell you that we want, let's say we needed an acre of wetlands. They might say, well, we want 3 acres just because we're DEP and we think we should do that. And that's commonly what happens. And there's not going to be any way that we're going to create those wetlands on this property. And you have to have a DEP approved mitigation area on the property. And if you don't, you have to create it somewhere else. So the easiest way to do it, and usually the least expensive way, is simply to put money into this fund for them.
It's like a parking bank, stormwater utility.
There you go.
Cool. All right.
All
I
right.
get it. Thank you. Good questions.
Yeah. I'm sorry, were there other questions on this one? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now let's go to Resolution 22-121, which is one of the 3 ones we're adding. Resolution extending the conditional designation of Terhune Development LLC, an affiliate of Wind Development Company LP, as redeveloper for a portion of property located at North Harrison Street and Terhune Road, also known as Block 7401, Lot 1.02, and a portion of Lot 1.01 located in an area in need of redevelopment for redevelopment of an inclusionary housing project. Is there a motion on that? Okay, Michelle's
I'll
got the
move it,
motion.
and
Okay, good.
I just wanted to ask Frank, my understanding is that we've just run out of time, so it's just basically an extension, but I wanted to ask Frank to explain.
Yes, well, that's accurate. The council, this really applies to all 3 of the resolutions. The council originally designated Wynn/Terhune Development, Avalon Bay, and Princeton Edens back last spring as conditional redevelopers for a certain period of time. They were the resolution, the designations for Wynn and Avalon were previously extended. They have expired, so this is just to extend them through June 30th of this year. with the goal of finalizing the redevelopment agreements and pilots for each of those. Edens is proposed to be extended through the end of the year because
Do we lose Frank?
We lost Frank. But it's okay. But he was getting into one of the, oh, here he comes back. We'll try to. Hang on when he gets back.
Something odd happening. I also just got bumped off.
Okay.
Yeah, I got kicked off too.
Yeah.
You just think, okay.
Hey, Frank, can we just, I think it'd just be better if we just limit what we're saying about each resolution as we do it.
Sure, of course. You got it. So I apologize, Mayor. Now that I confuse things, I don't know which one you first.
No,
did.
that's fine. This is the one for wind development.
Okay.
Well, Terhune development / wind. Sorry.
Yep. So that was originally in May of 2021. It was extended for the first time on the 27th of September. It expired on February 28th, and the resolution is proposing an extension through June 30th of this year.
Yep. Any council questions on this one? Okay, all in favor of resolution 22-121? I'm sorry, Eve, do you have a question?
I don't believe that we introduced it. Do we?
Yeah, I introduced it, but I don't think anyone seconded it.
No, well, okay, I'm sorry. There was
Because I,
Mia. Yeah, Mia and Michelle were going back and forth on that, and Mia kind of cut out. But so, Dawn, you can pick either one to make the motion and the other one to second it because they were doing it at the same
Don't be
time.
offended, Don. You can put either one of us first and either second.
Yeah. But no,
Okay,
that was,
thank you.
yes, thank you. That was there. Thanks for asking, Louis. Okay, so we know it was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. Thanks. All right, so now we'll do 22-122, resolution extending the conditional designation of Avalon Bay Communities, Inc. as redeveloper for a portion of property located at North Harrison Street, also known as Block 7401, a portion of Lot 1.01, located in an area in need of redevelopment for development of an inclusionary housing project. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mia. Leighton's got the second. Frank, do you want to?
Yes, it's similar to the last one. The original designation was May 10th of 2021. It's extended again by council on September 27th, 2021, expired February 28th, 2022, and the resolution is authorizing an extension to June 30th of 2022.
Thank you. Any questions on that one? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. Resolution 22-123. Resolution extending the conditional designation of Princeton in parens Edens LLC as redeveloper for a portion of property located at North Harrison Street, also known as Block 7401, Lot 1.01, C01, and a portion of 1.011 located in an area in need of redevelopment for development of a mixed-use project. Frank?
This designation was initially done on May 24th of 2021, and that extension expired on December 31st of 2021. The resolution is proposing an extension to December 31st of 2022, and the reason for that longer period of time is before we even get to negotiating a redevelopment agreement with Edens, a redevelopment plan has to be prepared and then ultimately adopted. So that's going to take a little longer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the resolution? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Do we
Yeah,
introduce it?
No.
I'm sorry.
On that one.
What are you, I'm sorry. Eve,
That's
what-
right. We
It
started.
was not moved on.
We didn't introduce it.
You're right.
We didn't introduce it.
You're right.
Okay. If you
Mark,
say
it's not even that late. What's your excuse?
I don't know. I had a beer a month ago and it still affected me. What can I tell you? Okay.
I moved to introduce.
Thank you, Eve. Michelle's got the second. Thank you very much. I guess we should do things the right way. That helps. Okay. Any other questions on what Frank just explained? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. Frank, thanks a lot for joining us.
Good night, all.
Have a good night. All right. The consent
Aye,
agenda is
Frank.
up next. If no one has a need to pull anything out of the consent agenda, someone could move the consent agenda. All right.
So
Mia's
moved.
moving the consent. Oh, sorry. Leticia moved it. Mia's got the second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Yeah, I don't, my screen keeps slowing down here. I'm not sure what the problem is, but anyway. Okay, I think we're done. David?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Eve.
Second.
Okay, we're done. Everybody have a great night. The meeting's over. Thank you.